Blue Moon from Trade. It's delicious. Like, honestly, actually fantastic. Well, guess I should give it a second. Also, Dragon Force. Equally spectacular in a very different way. Oh, are there actually people watching? That would be great. People should message in the chat if they're actually watching, because that would be cool, and it would make me feel amazing. Maybe they're really watching. How much is left in this track? Yay, Jamie! I will. I will insist on feeling amazing, in fact. Oh, God, there's still 4 minutes left in this track. That's ridiculous. Oh, well, I should get down to it. Or not. Or yes? I don't know. There's this thing where, like, streams that I've watched before on YouTube, they wait like 5 to 10 minutes, but they have actual audiences. It seems weird to do that when... Yeah, it's very true. It feels weird to do that when, like, I don't actually have an audience, but I also don't... Well, I have a little bit to talk about this week, but not a lot. Mostly character introduction and how spectacularly well that went. And how weird I make this world. But, yeah. I don't know. Words. Stuff. Things! Shut up. No, go away. Yes, I know I'm live. Thank you. Thank you, email, telling me that I am live right now. That's very useful to know. Yeah, well, that's 2 minutes. That's enough for people to get online. Hello. Back for session 2 of the plot of Conquerors. Last we left our heroes, rather, they had defended their town of New Haven. Well, defended is a strong word in this particular instance, considering they were all left for dead except for one who lost their best friend that disappeared off into a little solo adventure. So defended is maybe not the right word, but survived. They survived the destruction of their village, which is oftentimes equally important for defending. And met two gods, Pelor and Melora, who granted them great power and a quest to go west and seek out the evil there and destroy it. There's something I didn't mention last week that I should have. When the gods came up, and this is something I believe in very firmly, you don't have to do accents, which people think means something very very specific, sounding like a person from another country. Sometimes it's just a matter of modulating your voice. When Pelor spoke, it was slow, it was deliberate, and I lowered my timbre, lowered my pitch, and just said, go to the west, seek out the evil there. Enunciating a little bit more than I might normally, and really pushing those big vowels, go, seek, evil, and just really pushing those out of my lungs. And that's what makes character, in my opinion. It doesn't have to be, oh yes, jolly old England, or terrible Irish accent, or yes, comrade. Sometimes it's just as simple as go, seek out the evil there. Or the classic Colville Dragonborn, where they he must, they do that hard T, and they elongate their S's just a little bit. He must obey. It is the way of feudal lords. And it feels different and exciting, and it feels like a character, even though you're not putting on an accent. Best thing you can ever do to actually make NPCs, but even PCs feel spectacular, you know? And that's something that I even encourage my players to do, you know, when you're having a great role-playing moment and you're actually speaking, you know, in the moment, in character, everything's coming out a la minute, and it's just that great moment. Let your voice, you know, make who that person is. And that doesn't mean dwarves have to sound bad Scottish, because no one sounds like a Scotsman. And, you know, sometimes it's just a matter of really feeling out who is this person and how do they sound a little bit different from me. And now when you put on that voice, your players or the other players, if you're a player, know that you're in character. No questions asked. Yeah, Book J's got a great point there. Intonation, you know, how you're putting on emphasis on words, you know, putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable, as I like to call it. You know, when we say something complicated like a name, you know, if we were to say this name Zachary, you know, it could be Zachary, 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 Zachary. And all of these come from different cultures and come from different sounds. You know, if they've only seen something written, then they don't know what it is. And that can make very intriguing interactions where clearly these people don't understand the words that the other person's saying just because they're not able to pronounce it the same way, you know? So just a point that I should have made last week that I think is really important. This session, when we got back together and all the friends met up yet again, the New Haven survivors, as they soon would call themselves, journeyed west. West is towards the core mountains, so they had to venture out into the hills, into the foothills, and then into the rocky landscape and into the mountains themselves. Along the way, they met a new team member, Sunshine of the Occult Crescendo, played by my wonderful wife. Sunshine is a half-elf paladin. And she introduced herself, and really, this is what I'm going to talk about, is what makes this character spectacular. Because my wife is very much a role player. She wants to be a character that's not herself. It might have a lot of feelings that she has towards things, but she wants to be something interesting and different from herself. And Sunshine's definitely that. Sunshine is very dumb, except about the things she knows about. If she doesn't know about it, she doesn't know about it. And that's it. So the animals of the forest, the survival for yourself, tracking, fending for yourself, finding food and foraging, knowing about combat and tactics, maybe not strategy, maybe not warfare, but definitely small tactics and fighting and defending your life and how for others to defend their lives as well. But outside of that, she doesn't know much. So she introduces herself. They're traveling out of the town, maybe a half day out. You can still see the town behind them. And there's this figure trudging towards them, is the best way to put it. You know, certainly walking, but in heavy armor, outsized for themselves. And you just hear this clunk, clank, clang, as this figure is walking gently towards you. And the figure holds out its hand and gives a very exuberant wave, as if to say a hearty hello. And they get close enough to talk when Sunshine introduces herself and says, "Hello, I am Sunshine of the Occult Crescendo. Are you new friends of mine?" Or something to that effect. I don't remember exactly, but I know she said her entire name. Oh no, it was and who are you? And she speaks very exuberantly, very chipper. I cannot imitate the way that my wife comes across, but it is the bubbliest, silliest. Hello, I am Sunshine of the Occult Crescendo. Who are you? As if that's the way that this person thinks you should introduce yourself. You know, they do not know the proper way to, well, I guess that's not improper, but they don't know the real way to introduce yourself. You know, it's just this rote, hello, I am Sunshine of the Occult Crescendo. Who are you? It almost comes across Saturday morning cartoony, or Blues Cluesy, you know, kids shows where everything is so exuberant as to be overplayed. And it was just spectacular, and they did not trust her immediately because of it. It's great. I don't mind that. You know, a lot of people, I think, say, you know, okay, we're introducing a new character. Everybody knows, you know, look, don't make a thing about it. And I'm okay with the opposite sometimes, you know. If I know that the player is very serious about the character, but I also know that the team isn't really gonna like them, then I might give the, like, in the middle of it, hey, like, this is their character, you know, they're gonna join your team somehow or another. Let's figure that out. You know, and then you have that out of character conversation where you're like, hey, you know, maybe like, you know, go around to the table and say, you know, okay, what is a reason you would trust them? What is a reason you like them? What's a reason you don't like them? You know, and get all that out, you know, and then together, collaboratively, one of the wonderful things about tabletop role-playing games is the ability to be collaborative, work together to figure out, why is this person going to be part of your team, and some reason you're okay with that beyond that's what this person is playing and that's what it's going to be because it's their call. You know, I think there is a time and place for that, just firm, done. I also believe there's time and place. I've actually done this before where you interview. I was running a Firefly game, God, many years ago, long before I met my wife even. And we had, the pilot had just died, possibly because they threw a grenade inside of a spaceship. Luckily, they weren't in space. So the pilot had died. And so the captain and his, you know, first mate, first crew, whatever, interviewed 3 characters that the pilot's player had made for the new pilot. You know, and it was a really interesting, like, you know, they had to pilot to another planet where they would be able to find more candidates. And they made 3 different characters, all of which they were totally fine with playing. Hi, honey. So the pizza stuff is ready. Just like put it on, throw it in the oven to warm it up, and it's perfect and great. Cool. And so the player was totally fine with playing any of those 3 pilot characters. They were all not equally good at piloting, but close. You know, they were all good pilots, because I don't think it would have been very useful or anything to have the, you know, oh yeah, they're totally a great pilot, but, you know, it ends up being a ruse or something like that. That's not fun, especially when you're running Firefly and you need someone to fly the ship. But they all had different personalities, you know, and so the captain and first mate met all 3 of them, and we actually did a out of session interview, you know, and then they made the call, and they decided who of these 3 was going to be the one that was going to join the team, going to be part of the crew, and go from there. And ended up working out great. You know, so I think that it can be a wonderful thing to do, but you obviously got to be in the right game. You got to be in the right position, and it just has to be viable. In D&D, oftentimes it is not. unless you're assembling a group, you know. I think there can be a world and there can be a game where that's wonderful, but heroic adventures like this, oftentimes not so much. Uh, I do vaguely remember they didn't ask like where do you see yourself in 5 years, but they did ask like some actual interview questions, not just do you know how to fly a ship, and it was all done in character, So the pilot, when he actually I think was asked at one point, like, how well do you know how to fly a ship? He said, "Oh, I've flown blah blah blah," and pulled like 5 different classes of ships from the Firefly universe out of his brain. And I served in this and fought in that battle. But I want to say there was one question that the first mate asked everyone, which was, I don't remember, but it was something to the effect of, if you came to a red light and there was no, or if you came to a place where you have to stop, because obviously like red lights, like in our world, are not a thing in Firefly. If you came to a crossroads with a horse and there was no one around to see, would you, do an illegal turn or something? I don't remember exactly how he worded it, but basically something like that. Would you break the law if no one was around to see it? And it was a great question and really revealed a lot about these people that I think a team of smugglers would want to know, without revealing that they're smugglers, obviously. And I do know they asked every single one, would you throw a grenade inside of the ship? To which 2 of the 3 answered, what's wrong with you? And the other one said, if it was necessary and I felt like committing suicide. That one was not hired. Yeah, it was good stuff. It was a really good time. But back to this session, this was a way for Sunshine to introduce herself, and it worked out really well. She was very earnest because that's who she is. She was very straightforward because that's what she does. Sunshine does not know the meaning of the word deception. Quite literally, maybe. And they asked her, like, who are you? Why are you here? Why is your armor mismatching? Why is there blood on your greaves? And she said, oh, I found that on a battlefield. And they asked, why is your armor mismatching? And she said, oh, I found this over there and this there, and I found that over there. But I was given this helmet. Isn't it shiny? It was really, really spectacular. She asked at one point, where they were going, and they said towards the mountains to seek out evil. She said, oh, where, why can't you, or there was something that led her to say, why can't you go home? And one of the characters just like, moved to the side. It was that great cinematic moment of like, you can finally see the destroyed, razed to the ground, headstones everywhere village that was hidden by this person's head. It was a great little cinematic where everyone immediately went, oh, like that shot from that movie, great little moment. And almost everyone was like, oh yeah, perfect. That's perfect. And she said, oh, I am sorry. And again, that's this character. She's innocent isn't the right word. And it's funny because the party is very criminal. They're very underworld. They want to, skirt the law and utilize the law to achieve their means, but in a, possibly evil, but definitely neutral, not good way. And I wouldn't say Sunshine is innocent. I would just say that she's very naive at this point. She genuinely does not understand how the world works, because of a number of different things. But yeah, it was a really great time. Really got that introduction through and got to meet more of the characters and then sunshine as well, and the two got to really gel for at least a second. Not completely, but enough to say, yeah, you're cool. Come on, you know. So they wander up into the mountains, making some rolls, survival, trying to, follow the trail of the goblins that retreated from the village back towards wherever they were going. They found a weird bush that I'm trying to remember if it either jumped or it squeaked. But it made some sort of motion or noise, and players didn't like that. So they lit it on fire. And if that doesn't say everything about this group, then I don't know what to say. They met a mysterious bush that made noises, and they let it on fire. It was something where I wanted to make the world feel weird. I wanted to make this world feel extraordinary. This is fantasy. Fantasy is odd. Magic is unique and special. And these are characters from a small town in the middle of nowhere that have maybe seen some cantrips or first level spells at the most done, but they're certainly not, heavy magicians that have done a lot of crazy magic. And B, a lot of relatively new players, two of our 5 players, I think, one of our 5 players had never been in a role-playing game at all before, and the other one of the 2 had played like a few sessions a while ago, so it was one of those, I want to make them understand that this world is weird. This world is unique. There's strange stuff out there, and it's not all dangerous. Sometimes it's just a bush that squeaks that you light on fire and then it runs away going, is what it is. They did pretty well on the rolls, found their way towards these tracks up into the mountains, ended up encountering some goblins along the way, partially because I wanted to have them combat this session, and partially because I wanted them to see how much more capable they were now than before. And so they faced a group of goblins. 8 or 9 base goblins, just real standard. And I also wanted to show off what goblins do, that they're hit and run fighters, that they can run away from you. You can dart in and out of combat. They're very good at hiding, things like that. So they encountered them around a bunch of boulders, so there's these cover objects that are A, tall enough to grant advantage on attacks, and B, big enough to hide behind, and that you would have to actually go around to catch sight of them. And so they encounter these goblins. Some of them are on top of the rocks. Some of them are just kind of lounging about. The 2 groups are kind of surprised by each other because of some tall grass nearby. So I didn't want it to be something where the group or the enemies got surprise. I could have, but I didn't want this to be a walk in the park. But I also didn't want it to be, a total bloodbath because the goblins got a full turn, and there was a lot of them, however much their attack bonus wasn't great, and the PCs are now very capable and things like that. I didn't want it to be a bloodbath in either direction. Nobody's life was on the line here, and it shouldn't have been, So the goblins are, some of them are on top of the rocks and firing from height. So they know, okay, shooting a bow from above someone grants advantage, makes it a lot easier to hit, some of them rushed in to try and occupy people to keep them from getting to the rocks to be able to take out the ones up on top. And some of them were actually, bopping out from rocks, firing, and then moving back. So they were actually hiding, and some of them would even move between the rocks when they knew that no one could see them from this angle. So they could actually move between them and be hidden the whole time, so they would So they would, fight. They'd be fighting these goblins. They'd see this one fire and then hide back behind the rock. And someone, I want to say Sunshine, actually ended up trying to move around and catch them. And suddenly they're not there anymore because they'd ran behind a different set of rocks. And so that really opened the players' eyes, even though they wiped this combat out no problem. I think, some people took some damage, but it definitely wasn't enough to put them down. The goblins are only dealing like 3 or 4 per attack. Players all had in the 8 to 9 range. I do want to. I do believe there was a good amount of good berries thrown around, but it wasn't anything crazy, and it really made the players feel powerful, because a session ago they couldn't take out 3 goblins, much less 8 or 9. They also weren't functioning as a team before. Suddenly, Matt isn't running away and leaving the rest behind. Suddenly, Taco is actually, shooting things from afar. He was targeting the ones up top while the others were occupying the ones in melee. They were sort of thinking. I won't say that they really got their tactics down yet, but it was a danger room. It was a combat test. No one's life is in danger. Even if anyone went down, I probably wouldn't have. No, I wouldn't have attacked them. That's not a question. But I probably wouldn't have, even made them roll death saving throws. I would have said, yeah, you're fine. You'll come back up in a little bit. Because this wasn't meant to be anything serious. I was also tracking player hit points because I knew what everybody had. And I had the goblins dealing a static amount of damage per attack. So I knew, okay, I can hit this person twice and that person 3 times and so on and so forth down the line. And that way, everyone could feel really spectacular. With good berries giving you a full meal for everyone eaten, is eating multiple ones to heal wounds an unpleasant experience? I can imagine that, actually. It would kind of be like eating a lot of like oats all at once. It's not bad, however good the oats are. It's just you get this weird like full feeling. Oh, that would be interesting. Ooh. But yeah, so it was a really great combat. It was a really great, push for the players. Like, hey, this is your first combat as leveled individuals. Go for it, man. Like, now they were still heavily risk averse. And this group is. You'll see that more throughout the Goblin Fortress this episode and next. This group is incredibly risk averse. They almost refuse to put themselves on the line if they can possibly help it. And usually it's Sunshine pushing them to, be heroes and be special and exceptional and all that. But yeah, they then get to a cliff face. In the cliff face is 6 holes. And I design the outside of the Goblin Fortress very specifically. So there's this flat cliff face, and then there are boulders around it. And those boulders, the nearest one is 35 feet away from the rock wall. Or no, sorry. The furthest one is 65 feet away from the rock wall. Sorry. Words. So anyone other than a wood elf, which is not a viable option for characters at this point, would not be able to reach the wall in a full turn. Oh God. And so, first they either need to attempt to be stealthy as they approach this cliff face, or they need to make a distraction. That was the way the first group I ran this through went through. One of them was a monk, so he just ran out and dodged and had a pretty good AC, and I think got hit by like 1 attack. Oh, so attacks. So those holes in the wall have crossbows in them, manned by goblins. And I make the DC to notice just enough to where the person with the greatest passive perception will notice, but no one else will. And I know this is a thing that some people don't like, but I set that DC for every group differently because it is a test. I want to see what that player is going to do. Are they going to reveal it to the rest of the group? Are they going to, if I tell you, hey, you can tell in these holes, you see a little shiny glint of metal, and you figure out that there's a crossbow bolt in there, and it's pointed out. Are they going to figure out what's about to happen? Are they going to tell the group? Are they going to throw one of the other players under the bus? I don't know, and that's kind of their call. And I want it to be their call because that's one of the wonderful things about Dungeons and Dragons is this idea that sometimes the wrong person finds out, and that's okay. Worst comes to worst, the party all goes in the clearing, or the party minus one person goes in the clearing, and 6 crossbow bolts fire out. I'd split the attacks evenly. You've got 5 people. Okay, so 4 of them go out because the one who noticed probably doesn't, hopefully. So I split it amongst them all. So they all get kind of one attack. One person gets an extra one. I'd probably choose the highest AC player for that second one. And chances are most of them are going to miss, and they're not going to deal enough damage to put anybody down, except maybe a wizard with a low constitution, because they dealt like 5 damage, nothing crazy. No one's going to go down from this. And that really, then you get the cinematic, and the players going, and then running away. And now they have to regroup and figure out what to do, but every group so far, that's not happened to. They've realized what it is, and they formulate a plan of some kind. This group's plan was send in the ranger, stealthing, and hope he rolls well enough, which he did 4 times. But yeah, so they got up, they figured out exactly what it was. They kind of got to look inside. The ranger was the one who saw the crossbow bolts to begin with. So he was like, okay, there's definitely goblins up in there. And they're ready to fire at a moment's notice. He goes back to the group, succeeds on his stealth again. Tells them what's going on, and they're like, okay, let's formulate a plan. And they, is that this session or the next one? I want to say it was either this session or at the beginning of next session. They figure out, okay, so we've got some flasks of oil and we've got some rags. So we're going to, basically make Molotov cocktails. And the ranger takes one, goes back up to the wall, succeeds on his stealth again, throws this Molotov inside the hole. And what they didn't realize is on the other side, these holes are pretty far up. The lowest hole is just high enough that a human with, could like stand on their tippy toes and see into it. The next one is like 10 feet above that. And the one above that's 10 feet above that. Well, how is a goblin going to get that far up? The answer is wooden scaffolding. Fire bad. So they throw this Molotov in. The wood lights on fire. You hear goblins screaming and wood burning. And I made some surreptitious rolls behind my screen, just D20s, nothing crazy, kind of just a percentile. If I rolled high, maybe one of the goblins would get out. If I rolled low, maybe one of them wouldn't, and they didn't. So the 3 goblins on that side die. The goblins on the other side hear the wood burning and go, "Oh hell no, I'm out." But of course, that's not something they could hear. They could hear the wood burning. I think I gave them perception rolls, but I really wanted some high rolls to be able to hear this. And so the other three goblins head back into the fortress, and they tell their boss that someone's coming and to be prepared. And that is, I believe, one of the important things when you're running a dungeon or a fortress or something like that. Guards like this are there to warn the next room. They're not there to kill players. They're not there to win combats. They're not even there to fight. They're there to go, "Hey, those look like heroes. We should get out of here." And so they head back in. The players don't notice. The ranger sneaks back. Didn't need to succeed on his stealth check, but he did again. And the party goes off to rest. They go off, a couple miles away, enough that they could see the cliff in case something came out, but they were not immediately right there if they did. But nothing came out, because that's one of the other thing about fortresses is fortresses are meant to hold a siege, and sieges are days and weeks and months. If you study the history of siege warfare, it is not, okay, we're going to go up to this castle, we're going to, throw our ladders up on the top and throw this superior force at them, and hopefully we get in. The battle at Helm's Deep led you wrong. No, I think a force like that would be sufficient, and they probably would do that. But most sieges are, we're going to post up out here. We're going to stop you from getting supplies and eating and getting clean water, and eventually you're all going to die or surrender. And that's the point of a siege. So when you have a fortress like this, especially built into the side of a mountain, run it that way. The goblins know they have food. They have water. They don't need to go anywhere. They have a way of dealing with darn stupid hero folk, and that's to outweigh them. Because frankly, most heroes are very short-minded. So that's kind of the way we ended the session. They went off to take a rest, and we just called it there. It was the end of the night. It was getting late. The combat had taken a while because this is the first time a lot of them had been using their abilities and had to actually add things to their attacks. The introduction with Sunshine took a while. This whole thing with figuring out what to do with the wall took a little bit. They are very much a group that thinks long about what best to do. And that's fun, actually, because it means that they come up with some really interesting ideas. Now, most of those ideas boil down to light it on fire and walk away. But that's a different problem. But yeah, it was a really great time. Really great session. I think this was a session that really got the players into what Plot of Conquerors is going to be going forward. And that is heroes vanquishing evil, and opposing the forces of the world that oppose good and law. Well, law, because let's be fair, these players, characters even, or both, don't obey law. Yeah, heroes in heavy quotation marks. God. I don't know if you guys can hear that cheering outside. I have no idea what they're yelling about, but they're yelling about something. Well, I think that's mostly it for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about what smolz has been doing this whole time. Because smolz, if you remember from the first session, went missing from Matt's, little cart that he was pushing. Smolz is played by my sister, and we were texting back and forth a solo scenario where Smolz meets the god that grants him his powers. And that god is not Pelor or Melora. We'll also talk about kind of the beginning of the fortress. I think there's 2 more sessions of that, maybe 3. We'll see. But yeah, it was a good time. It was a good session. I actually have 2 people in chat talking back and forth. It's great. Maybe next week, some of the people who keep saying that they'll watch will actually watch. I'm talking to you, Alex. I'm staring you right in the face. You should watch my videos as they happen. Anywho, key takeaways. From the session, let your players introduce themselves. Sometimes that's okay. It doesn't have to always be that. Thank you, Zach. Yeah, Alex. It doesn't always have to be just a, hey, this is the new character. This is what they look like. This is what they are. There you go. Sometimes it can be a scene. And that scene can mean something going forward. And that I think that's really important because it can make the characters through the players feel like this person's on the team for a reason. My other big takeaway from this session is really just run dungeons, y'all. They're fun. They're fun. I know I'm a grognard. I am. I ran games in the early 2000s and it was a very different world then, but run dungeons. Dungeons are reactive and it allows your players to be active. Now you're not trying to, inflict upon your players the woes of the world and them reacting to that. When you have a dungeon, it is kind of doing its thing, but, the actual players are the ones acting on the dungeon and making the dungeon react to them. Never give your players access to a large amount of lantern oil when they're still low level. I disagree. I completely disagree. I'm not saying that you obviously didn't abuse that lantern oil. You did. But that's okay. Dungeons and Dragons is not the world of darkness. Where, if I wanted to tell the story of a prostitute dying in a garret, I would recommend you go to My Friend in Oslo. Dungeons and Dragons is not that. It is, in my opinion, a story of heroes winning against impossible odds. It is a Greek comedy. The hero faces impossible odds and survives. It is not a tragedy. There are games for tragedies. They exist. They're a lot of fun. Call of Cthulhu is absolutely spectacular, and I believe it very heavily. Although, honestly, Call of Cthulhu can also do Greek comedies very well. But the idea of facing a fortress of goblins. Inside this fortress is over 4 dozen goblins. No, wait. 6, 14, 5, it's 25. 28, 27. Sorry, there's over two dozen goblins. And there are 5 heroes. That is impossible odds. If I told you that you had to bust into a house and you had to kill 27 dudes with 5 dudes, you would consider that very difficult. And that's what's spectacular about Dungeons and Dragons. It is in so many ways a power fantasy of feeling exceptional and being badass and doing cool stuff. And sometimes that involves taking a flask of lamp oil, stuffing a rag in it, lighting it on fire, and chucking it through a hole. And that's okay. Let your players do that. Let your players be exceptional. Reward their cool ideas. That doesn't mean the enemies aren't going to learn from it. And you'll see sessions from now that they do. They start to learn that there is this group of heroes out there who like to light shit on fire. And when they try to do that later, many sessions from now, it doesn't work as well as they want it to. In fact, it backfires and gets a lot of innocent people killed. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is a story for another time. My office hours are closed. I should eat something and go take care of my dog. You all have a wonderful night, and hopefully I'll see you again next week, 7 p.m. Same bat time, same bat channel.